You can't just expect yourself to be perfect. Like you have to expect and know that failure and challenge is part of running a business. It's not an anomaly. It's not an exception. It's not even a hiccup. It's just like it is. Like that. If you can't deal with failure, if you can't deal with challenge and stress, that is ingrained in what business running is. There is no separating those two worlds. It's impossible.
Howdy, folks, and welcome into the Free Outside Podcast. We are still a one-man show here, even though I use we, but thank you all for being here. Today's conversation is awesome. Have you ever wanted to start a company? Do you wonder how a small company gets going? Have you wondered why it's called the cottage industry? Well, maybe we don't answer that last one, but let me tell you, cottages are not just for fairy tales. The cottage industry is blossoming. That's where so much innovation comes from. And today I'm talking to the co-founder of Garage Grown Gear, which is really an e-commerce platform where 200 small businesses sell their products. Some of these small businesses literally operate out of a garage or maybe a spare bedroom. I don't know if garages are still that popular. But anyways, with Lloyd, we go into the state of the industry, the crossover between different disciplines, such as like through hiking, trail running, FKTs, car camping, glamping, even motorcycle camping, all these different things and the gear that kind of works for everything, lessons that you learn outside and taking them off the trail as well, and then some fun facts and little tidbits about how to start a business, what it takes, the brands that succeed, the brands that don't, basically everything in between. And it's really cool to talk to Lloyd because in my past I worked with, I think it was like 109 small businesses. I did the math at one point when I was doing small business consulting where I'd come in and work on the financial side, help them hit their pricing structure, valuations, come up with a company structure. Companies even would hire me to come in and fire an employee. So that would be kind of rough. But anyways, let's get into this conversation with Lloyd Vogel, and thank you all for being here. And just remember, if you want to get through this a little bit quicker, just crank that speed up to 1.5, because 1.5 times means that you are through it in some percentage less than what you expect. Thank you all for being here. Let's go. All right. Welcome, Lloyd Vogel, the co-founder and CEO of Garage Grown Gear. So I'm first curious, Lloyd, how do you run a e-commerce backpacking shop from the heart of the backpacking world in Minneapolis?
That's a great question.
How did you end up in the Midwest?
Well, the thing about being born in the Midwest is, high chance that you're going to stay there. I grew up in Milwaukee. I moved to Minneapolis for school and kind of just got, stuck here. And it feels more like home. You and I are similarly aged, Jeff. And, I've now lived in Minneapolis for about as much time as I've lived anywhere else, which is kind of a weird thing. I don't really identify as a Minnesotan, but no, other than the fact that I'm here, there's not a real reason why Garage Grown would really be here. Like, there's a great outdoor culture in Minnesota, but it's very canoe centric. We've got Lake Superior, a lot of great sea kayaking, but backpacking, the SHT, I have appreciation and fondness for it, but I would not say that Minnesota is like a particular mecca of ultralight backpacking.
It does seem like there's a number of companies, though, based in the Midwest that you see their packs like on the John Muir Trail every year and things like that.
That's true. Yeah. Granite Gear up in Two Harbors. You've got Enlightened Equipment down in Winona. I think it's all these folks that started sewing stuff because they're like, I need to get out of Minnesota. I need an excuse. And if I make my own stuff, maybe I can go test it somewhere that's not in the Midwest. And
totally.
That's said with a lot of love for the Midwest, but also a lot of appreciation for whenever I can go to somewhere that is not the Midwest.
Yeah. So I'm especially curious with Garage Grown Gear, like starting an e-com site seems so daunting, and especially bringing in new entrepreneurs and everything into one platform with the likes of Amazon, like one of the biggest companies in the world out there. How did you come up with the idea and launch? How many brands do you need? How do you begin an endeavor where what you're doing is being a platform? That seems daunting.
Yeah, I think the most important thing about it is just to not really know what you're doing so that you have really no inhibitions about where you could go wrong. and just kind of blindly going in a direction without questioning it too much, which is kind of what I did with Garage Grown. I started a different company before Garage Grown Gear, and then we merged with Garage Grown in 2017, I think. And in that merger, kind of the modern version of Garage Grown Gear was born. And yeah, I mean, I think with that, it's all about the niche. Like, I don't know. I was just lamenting about this on LinkedIn the other day. Oh, cool. LinkedIn reference. But the notion that, like, I think some of the things that are wrong with retail right now is this, that everyone's kind of selling the same thing. When the outdoor industry is ever kind of having a hard time, it kind of locks down on its line leaders. Like you default towards investing in the things that are proven, the things that make you the most money. And what that does is that it takes out the risk from it. You think that you're eliminating risk by locking down on the things that are sure bets. But over time, that makes you generic. It makes you boring. It makes you uninteresting. And it makes specialty retail just not specialty. And because you can get it everywhere. You can get it at your local shop. You can get it at REI, Gander Mountain, Amazon. And in doing so, all you really do is create a cost comparison. The only real differentiator is price. And as soon as that happens, it's a race to the bottom. So I think for Garage Grown, kind of the way to be competitive is just not to compete. Like, we don't really mess around in their swimming pool. Like, it's admittedly a smaller piece of the pie, but it's our pie. For most of our brands, the only other place that you can buy it other than on their site directly is through us. So and we work very closely and very collaboratively with our brands. So, one could see that as a competition between ourselves and our brands, but it's not really the case, because we don't really care where you buy it from. If you buy it from us, you buy it from the brands themselves. Like, what we are doing is just trying to yell loudly and tell anyone who will possibly listen that this kind of part of the outdoor industry exists. And you don't have to just buy all this stuff that's being thrown at you all the time. You can be more intentional. You can, like, do a little bit deeper of shopping and support kind of on a different level. So
yeah, and it goes like with the Pepsi Coke thing of how both of them have done better when they're next to each other in stores, because the opportunity to choose, and people will choose one of them. So they both have sold more when there's a vending machine next to a Coke and a Pepsi vending machine next to each other.
Exactly right.
And yeah, I think the cool thing about the site is too, you can discover brands, and then some of them you can only order like through an Instagram DM. So it's like this two-way platform of the intro to a brand as well.
Yeah, I think that's like our most browsed pages on our website are our brand pages. I think a lot of people do use us for that discovery, where they stumble upon Garage Grown, like maybe through one of our bigger brands like Z-Packs or Hyperlight. And then they suddenly are like, wow, there's this entire ecosystem of companies that I never knew existed, that I haven't heard of, or maybe I've heard referenced somewhere on the corner of the internet, but I sure as hell don't know how to buy them. Sorry, I'm not on my Instagram every 10 minutes, like trying to see when that 1 minute that I can purchase this custom thing is. Yeah, I like to think that, ultralight can be about as elitist as any niche that exists, but we really try to take the approach of Garage Grown of like, we are trying to make ultralight backpacking accessible. We're trying to make it as like easy to be able to support small brands as possible. Like, you don't have to browse a website that was built in the, early 90s. You don't have to like know somebody who knows somebody. You don't have to know what fill power is, or, all the different types of denier. You can just like go on there, and if you care about those things, awesome. And if you don't, you can like still buy a quilt and it'll still work. There's no substitute for knowing what you're doing in the outdoors, but also like gear shouldn't be a prerequisite, but it also shouldn't be a hindrance. And somewhere in between those two spaces is where we want to be able to occupy.
Totally. So when you first started out, what did you have for products? Where was the vision going right when the site launches? What's on there? What could I buy?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll kick you off to the progenitor of Garage Grown, which was Big Outdoors, which was the company that I started, which I sunk every penny I had into it, and it did literally nothing.
Welcome to entrepreneurship.
Yeah, it was a flop, but it led towards Garage Ground, and that's been really great. But yeah, the initial concept was to buy custom only products in stock and buy them in bulk. And then, so one of our first brands that I started working with was Superior Wilderness Designs in 2016. They right before they went and hiked the PCT and launched their website, I was in contact with them, and I still have one of the first pack that they made commercially. And it looks very different than what they're making now. But yeah, we bought a dozen packs and sold them, and they would ship within 1 to 2 days instead of having 8 to 10 weeks. So I launched that with brands like thru, Superior Wilderness Designs, Luke's Ultralight, now defunct, Wilderness Design Systems. It was a quilt company. The guy passed away while we were working with them. Yeah, it was a bunch of some random brands, some that are still around and kicking and doing great. But then when we merged with Garage Ground, we and I took over Garage Ground and kind of launched the iteration that it is now. That's when some of those original brands of Hyperlight mountain gear, Enlightened equipment, brands who now are pretty much household names within our section of the industry. But I don't know, 8 years ago, Hyperlight wasn't what Hyperlight is now.
Totally.
Same with Enlightened equipment, or just the visibility around Cottage brands wasn't anything where it is now. Purple Rain, Adventure Skirts, Supply Pack Rafts. A lot of these are kind of the OGs. And back then, it was just begging and pleading brands to please work with us. I think we have a viable business model. I think, we'll be able to do good things for your brand. Just believe that maybe a retailer for small brands could exist, because there was definitely a lot of iterations of Garage Ground prior to Garage Ground by a lot of people trying to kind of do a similar thing, and it never really stuck. And I think we just kind of hit it at the right place in the right time. I think coupled with the right ethos and kind of some modern marketing. But yes,
it's so interesting too, because probably it was too early for big outdoors, but you learned enough that when you had the second time around, it was probably the perfect timing, because it's sort of showing up and hitting that right time, right place with the right skills, or else you do lose that whole investment. It's pretty wild.
Totally. I mean, the amount of luck that comes into, the amount of luck and the amount of privilege. I think I'm constantly reminded by that with entrepreneurship. That's not the case for everyone, but it definitely has been for me. I was a teacher prior to doing this, and kind of just decided to well, why not? I think I'll just try something, and if it fails, who cares? I'll do something different. And you also being in your mid-20s, I feel like nothing matters in your mid-20s. No one has any expectations for you. You have no expectations for yourself. You're just throwing pasta at a wall. And, that's kind of what Big Outdoors was. And it led to Garage Grown. And, I don't fling too much pasta at the wall anymore, but I think even the great thing about running a relatively small company is that you can still just always be nimble, always be adaptable. And as soon as you stop doing those things, that's when competition does pop up, or when you would see another version of Garage Grown pop up. But I think it's kind of one of those things of maybe we'll have some competitors enter in this space eventually. But I think as long as we continue to be the best platform for small brands, we don't create a lot of space for someone to do what we do better than us. And if we're still on the cutting edge of ultralight, if we're still working with small brands when they're tiny, who's going to come in and work with even smaller brands than us? You're already working with people that don't have brands and are sewing 3 things in their basement. You can't get more cottage than some of these brands that we work with. They wouldn't exist.
Yeah, let's go there. How do you find the brands to put on the website? I know you have the 3 buckets, the bigger companies that are the staples and maybe in a big retailer as well. And then you have the mid-size, but how do you find those that are quality, but are just an Instagram page, or they're not out there yet, but it's maybe a technology that's coming, an Alpha Direct type thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of it is just, kind of being an avid fan myself. I kind of say that Garage Ground at times is the biggest ambassador or influencer of the cottage industry. of, we happen to be a retailer, but like really what we do is just like try to broadcast small brands on our platform. And so like, I'm on Etsy, I'm on Reddit, I'm on Instagram. So, identify those brands that are doing that exclusive drop, like what Senshi Designs did a couple of years ago, or what Sam Bob did. These brands that have these limited things, those are brands that I'm connecting with and going like, hey, we'd love to be able to sell your stuff. And maybe Senshi initially was like, yeah, there's no way we could do that. We sell out in 1 minute. We don't have any stuff for you.
Yeah.
But like, you build that relationship over a while, and you find ways to be able to work with folks, especially when I think like there's a genuineness that comes with wanting to, form real relationships with people, Jeff, we've known each other in kind of outdoorsy spaces for years now. And, it's relationship oriented. Like you don't always know where everything's going, but like maintaining a positive ecosystem of like-minded people is important. And, I think about that with brands of like, yes, small brands, I'm constantly on the lookout, constantly sending emails. I don't care if we're going to work with them in a month or in 3 years. Sometimes that's how long it takes for it to be able to make sense. And
what's the pitch to a small brand when you're like, yeah, we're selling out of everything we can make, and you're like, well, if you make some generic sizes, then we can sell them on the site. Is it like that stability or that continual possible revenue coming in, or how do you frame that to someone who's just growing?
I think you already hit the nail on the head a little bit there. I mean, it's the sustainability and it's the banking on growth. So I think what we offer is saying, hey, if you want to make us stuff like, we are a mega customer. Like you can, not a mega customer, a mega MEGA customer. But
timely, yeah.
We timely very. But I think about it with Trail Brush, that little toothbrush that attaches on the end of a spoon. Like that dude, Andrew, can send 1,000 toothbrushes across the country that he individually packages and labels and ships, or he can send 1,000 to us and we'll do it for him. So we can be that takes a lot of effort and energy and customer service and shipping hassles and missed stuff off of his plate. So I think for some of it, for products that are kind of just small like that, that's a big thing. It's just like handling the whole process around it. I think it's also just visibility. If you're trying to grow something, we give you the most targeted audience that you could ever ask for. Like there is no group on the internet that is more interested in supporting small brands than GarageGrown. So if you have an eye towards growth and you want to be able to get access to a community of people that would love your stuff if they just knew that you existed, partnering with GarageGrown from as early as possible is going to be beneficial. And so you might lose a little bit of margin on that, but it's like it's essentially like marketing budget. Like you're losing margin to marketing. And unlike other retailers, like not that I think that we're all that different, but as opposed to your specialty shop, are you still out in Bozeman?
Yep. Yeah.
Like in Bozeman, like they might be able to hit that local Bozeman market really well. But like the loudest that they can shout is going to be within Bozeman. Whereas like, we have an international reach at this point, so we can kind of help put brands on the map in ways that typically, historically, they'd have to get on to Backpacker magazine to be able to really make their big break. And so totally. I think it's basically just telling brands like, hey, if you allocate, we need skin in the game. Like, give us a little skin in the game and we'll do a lot of work for you. But we can't just do this for free because, like we're doing real work that has real value. And we don't want a handout from you, but we can't do this for free. We need some incentive to be able to do this because if it's not a mutually reciprocal relationship, it's just never going to last. Like, totally. We can do a one-off for a brand that helps them out. But if it doesn't have long-term stakes in it, like, what's the point? Like, we're not in the business of just like making a friend and then saying goodbye, Yeah. Like these relationships with brands are ones that get better and richer and deeper with time so that when their brands grow, like we also reap the benefits. And yeah, I don't know, like capitalism is weird in a lot of ways, but I think kind of platforms where you really work with the brand themselves is the best side of what kind of consumerism can look like, where it is a real win-win for retailers, for brands, and for customers.
Yeah, and I love the approach is sort of genius because it's like back 20 years ago you would pay for a full page ad in Backpacker magazine and that would maybe lead people to your website where you sell. And instead it's like a marketing platform intertwined with like retail and distribution at Garage Grown Gear where the brand gains, I mean, as much or more of the marketing side and visibility as well as they can sell their product to the person who just clicked on it. It's not just an ad where you have to click through 3 times to even purchase something. It's like read about the brand, grow to enjoy what you're reading and figure out you need that and then buy it right there. It's pretty unique approach in that aspect.
Ah, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that. No, we definitely joke a lot that it's it's selling brands or products that you haven't seen from brands you haven't heard of. And how that is, not to get back onto an industry rant, but that is a big reason why a lot of big box retailers don't pick up small brands is because they don't really want to do the work. They just want to reap the benefit. And I think that's like kind of where we'll get in the weeds with brands. Like we've put, we've done a ton of promotional work for brands that 2 months later are like, we can't sell you more stuff because we don't have the space. And it's like, we just dedicated, dropped a couple $1,000s on getting your stuff stocked. We just put a whole bunch of promotional energy behind us and you just dropped us because all of the promotional work that we did just made you not be able to keep up with demand that we were driving. And so like for us, like, it just happens. Like, it's not like any hard feelings about it. We just hope that brand eventually kind of gets their production figured out in a way that can allow them to be back on Garage Grown. But like, I don't know, we don't have any contracts or like terms with brands where they have to sell to Garage Grown Gear exclusively, or if they can't meet this type of demand, like, nah, like it's, I don't know, it's just like a relationship. Like it has to ebb and flow more than that. And it requires more flexible thinking.
And having interacted with the big name companies that online retailers that people know, that's so rare too. And if you make one mistake, you're dropped in the lifetime of your product is out for its whole lifetime. So it's pretty wild. Totally. I think that's the biggest problem though, or the hardest thing to take care of is that stocking small brands continually. Cause that seems like an interesting thing is like, oh, push something out there. Wow. It's sold out. And the one person that makes them can only make so many per day.
It has increasingly been a challenge for us. Yeah, because, as we've gotten bigger, the brands that we start working with haven't. It's still just some person in the basement selling stuff or, late at night, after they got back from their day job. So I think we've had to be a little bit clearer in terms of the expectations that we set of like, hey, if you can only make us 3 of these a month, we're not quite able to work with you yet. Or let's just start with this one product. Like, I don't think you can make the 15 that we'd actually want. Let's start off with a single SKU. If you're able to keep up with making that one steak bag for us, let's expand that and go from there. Let's not bite off more than you can chew, because ultimately, like, that's not going to put us on a solid footing. And I think it's, as we've grown, like we carry like 250 brands at this point. Like, if brands are that complicated and that like they have to be willing to want to grow. Yeah. They've got to want it more than we want it. And if we want it more than they do, something's got to change. Yeah.
I mean, that's just the growth of the industry in general, where it's become so more mainstream, I guess, probably since 2020. Has that impacted you guys as well? Have you seen an explosion in interest, at least?
I think so. I mean, I think the ultralight backpacking, we haven't reached what its ceiling is yet. And I think, this is a weird time to be in the outdoor industry in general. Like, there's a handful of brands that have closed recently, some kind of bigger names in the space. I think some that you're very familiar with, that have just had some hard times. And it doesn't take a lot to take a small business under. Just takes a couple bad weeks of sales or some messed up cash flow, or doesn't take a lot. But I'd say that I think by really zoning in on the niche of ultralight backpacking, what we're not trying to do is be everything to everybody. We are trying to be something to some people. Because I think, a lot of the big box retailers that are kind of our competitors are really trying to be something to everybody. And I think they end up meaning nothing to anybody kind of in the process. And I think that's a real missed opportunity is to say we need to grow for growth's sake. And I don't care where that comes from. One of the things that we've said no to recently is like, we were kind of thinking about dabbling into bikepacking as a discipline because, so much of ultralight backpacking gear also works for bikepacking. I mean, other than like the bike and, some frame bags and, it's like a lot of your stuff that you're in camp with is the same. And we basically just had some very frank conversations with leadership of just, this doesn't make sense for us right now. Like, we need to keep doing what we're doing and do the best version of what we got. We don't need to creep into new verticals that we don't know as well. Like, the reason why our audience and our community loves us is because they love backpacking and we support that space. And yes, it is a good idea for a similar thing to garage grown gear to exist in the bikepacking space, but that doesn't mean that we need to do it. Even though it would be a growth area for us, but we risk losing the thing that we care most about, which is our core market, our core identity, what makes us us. And that's not worth, the potential of growth in a different area that we're not quite as passionate about.
Yeah. And I just being in like 3 different sports of like the trail running and the fast packing and through hiking as well, even just 2 months ago before Cocodona needed a new headlamp. So got on to garage grown gear to get that ultimately to use for trail running. So it is like you can find it when you're looking for the product as well as directly through the browsing brand pages as well. So I think as things grow, they're going to like intermix and intertwine even more where things like, I don't know, headlamps or bottles or filters or things like it'll just be purchasing it through whatever retailer. And then you'll hold on to your core audience and those people who exclusively shop at garage grown gear. But then you get that, like you're giving to brands, you get that exposure by people finding that product they're looking for a different thing like bikepacking. I'm sure people have ordered bikepacking gear from you but you don't need to market that because they end up there anyways, because through hiking stuff is so innovative, especially on the Cottage side.
Yeah, totally. And if it's trail running or fast packing, like if you're looking to go lighter and faster, regardless of what the medium is, you need lighter stuff. Like there is no route towards moving faster and carrying heavier stuff. And,
no,
there are some things that are just always going to work. I mean, we see motorcycle campers, buying a lot of stuff at Garage Grown. It's like we've never marketed a motorcycle in anything we've ever done. Didn't even really know it was a thing until a couple of years ago. To even glamping is it's not what we do. I like chilling in a van as much as anyone else, but it's it's just like not an area that we're in. But that doesn't mean that you don't need like a small little portable power bank or a tiny rain jacket that you can chuck away and tuck into a small little nook of your van. It's just like traveling lighter in general is just easier than. I don't know, just like it's reductive, but it's simple. Like when you carry less, it's easier than when you carry more. Like lighter stuff is easier than heavier stuff. Like,
yeah. I mean, even in your house, you're going to want to have a smaller gear closet if you can, like to fit all that smaller gear.
Totally. Yeah. It's why people have tiny dogs, Yeah, they want the experience of having a dog, but they don't want the square footage.
Yeah. They just want to walk it like 100 yards a day instead of 5 miles.
That's right. They get to travel. That's why you see all those little chihuahuas on the AT.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Maybe.
Yeah.
So on the product side, what have been a few of the most fun or innovative or cool products you've seen over the years?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I think what I love most about our little space of the outdoor industry is how quickly ideas go from trail to ideation and then to product. There aren't like year-long wait times. There aren't like, it's someone like hopping off the PCT and finding their grandma's sewing kit and being like, all right, I'm going to order some stuff from Ripstop by the roll and like make some monstrosity of a pack that looks terrible but like might eventually be able to be something that's cool. And I love that it's taking people's experience directly from trail and literally sewing it into the fabric of what they're making. So yeah, I think even like alpha is such a unique fabric that I think it really makes sense that the renaissance of alpha is happening within the cottage space. It's not like it didn't exist in other areas, but it wasn't taking off because it hadn't found its niche like it did within ultralight backpacking. You know, it's amazing as a direct-to-skin fabric. It's also amazing if you put a wind shirt over it and becomes incredibly insulating. It feels like almost like a magical fabric, I think, to some extent. And I think we're kind of just scratching the surface of what the whole alpha space looks like. And I think like some of the stuff, and for folks that are into ultralight, these things aren't new. But I mean, even just like when you if you do decide to transition from a sleeping bag to a quilt, just like how different that is. And I think a lot of the nuances of gear are in the small things rather than like the major ways. Like nothing's going to revolutionize the way you backpack entirely. Like you're still just walking through the woods, like end stop. Your pack is like some rectangular thing that has some strap configuration to your back. I've really enjoyed seeing, kind of the hybrid trail running backpacking packs with vest straps, packs that are removing hip belts and kind of shifting that weight upwards. Like I think all of that stuff, like it makes sense that it's both light and designed to move with your body. Like that just makes a ton of sense. And I think that it's cool to see kind of the fusions of those cross-disciplinary areas kind of come together. And I think those kind of broader trends of lighter fabrics that are also pretty durable, packs losing hip belts, packs losing stays. Like, how do we pack our packs better so that we don't need to feel like we necessarily need a frame? And if you feel like you need a frame, that's totally fine too. Like do whatever you want that makes you enjoy the outdoors in a way that you feel comfortable with. And stop.
Totally.
But I think there's so many like cool little tweaks and iterations on stuff, and I think everyone's ultralight experience is their own little journey. Like I know I swung really hard into the ultralight space with a really, I don't know. I've never like really been a pack weigher, but there's no way that my pack was like base weight was like more than 6 or so pounds, and realized that like I don't like that. Like I don't enjoy backpacking as much when that's the case, and so now it's creeped up more. Like I like having a pillow. I like sleeping on a inflatable pad that is comfortable, and So yeah,
I always think of how we used to cut our toothbrushes in half back in the day, and now that's a product. Like you can get the tiny toothbrush. It's pretty funny. It's everything that, I mean, even growing up, you're like, oh, someone should invent this. And then in the cottage, like backpacking through hiking world, it's like, well, someone will. The sewing machine and the number of people I've known that get off trail, learn to sew, and within a few months they have products. I think that's like one of the cool things about the internet is now you can have a customer market a product, and if you just are willing to put in the work, you can have a full business online from your sewing machine.
I think that is one of the coolest things about our industry. Like I think about it from, if you were a high school football player, you probably don't know a single professional football player. Like there is no accessibility between amateurs and pros. And in the outdoor industry, wow, is that not the case? Like, all you need to do is show up to any trail event, any trade show, like send anyone a DM on Instagram, and you're probably just like going to get a response from like folks like yourself, or, the founder of some company that you've idolized for years. Like, there's just not that much barrier in between that. And I think that's because largely within the industry, people are enthusiasts first and professionals second. Like there's not, like, it's not always the case within bigger brands. You definitely get sales reps who are, they are sales first, outdoor industry second, and that's fine. However, people need to make a living. Like it's not cast in anything, but it, I think the vast majority of our space of the outdoor industry is made by people who just like, I don't know, don't take themselves too seriously or don't pedestalize themselves too much, and largely are there because they love spending time outside and just happen to be good at making stuff or marketing stuff or something.
Yeah, it's so cool because, yeah, just like you said, like, let's take Nick Fowler set the PCT record last year, and then a few thousand other people also hike the exact same trail. It's not like they couldn't get into a football stadium where all the pros are playing. Right. Like they get to do the exact same activity. It's usually pretty open about the gear and stuff too. It's really a cool thing where you can take ideas or thoughts and go do and replicate it to whatever your heart's content is as well out there. It makes it a very interesting thing as it grows more into a sport than a hobby as backpacking was when I grew up.
Totally. Well, I mean, even like look at yourself, Jeff, as like, you know, one of the most prolific thru hikers of all time. You know, like just how accessible you make yourself, how inviting you do incredible stuff that most of us could only dream of, but you do it in a way that somehow like invites people to like kind of get involved and not to necessarily do the things that you're doing, but to it feels inviting instead of exclusive. And I don't know exactly what that is. Maybe it's, you know, the faux fur or the tiger print or I don't know, but it's you know, and this isn't the case in all aspects of the industry, but there is a welcomingness that happens, I think, at some of the highest areas or highest social standings within the outdoor industry that I think sets a really positive tone for how a community should behave and interact.
Well, I think it really starts at the top too, because everyone, even the people on the fringe, are into the public lands, accessibility and everything. And then that just permeates the sport on down into, well, if we're all fighting for the same public lands and they're public and that's what people are going and setting records on, then it's becomes a somewhat more inclusive and, I guess, industry or world that where everyone's invited to come out because we all want to enjoy and protect the same lands that mean so much to us all in different ways as well. It's pretty unique how even across like hunting or things where there might be very little in common, you have this main thing where you need the same exact land to do your activity. It's very rare you get something like that because no one's fighting over the big football stadium and the public use of that or something like that. We all have this common goal in the middle of a Venn diagram that overlaps so many more things than we probably acknowledge. Like, yeah, you have glamping, you have the motor biking, you have bike packing, thru hiking, trail running. It's pretty incredible I've always preached that like they're all so similar, yet we pretend that they're so siloed and don't interact. But it's kind of like I've never bought a headlamp specifically for trail running because they're the exact same in thru hiking. They do the exact same thing. It's pretty funny to just have this different thing where I love talking about how in trail running, they call it power hiking. And it's like, it's hiking. Like you don't like lift weights out there. You're just hiking. Come on. We do the same. You're doing the same thing as a backpacker climbing this hill. That's okay.
Yeah.
You should just embrace that.
Totally. Yeah. Like I'll frequently joke that, you know, backpacking is just like going for a walk in the woods. And like, that isn't meant to belittle what hiking is. It's meant to like normalize what walking is. Like, I don't know.
Totally.
It's or, you know, I compare it to kayaking and canoeing a lot. Of like, it's just like it's like, I walk on land because I can't canoe on land. I canoe on water because I can't walk on land. Like I'm just doing the medium that allows me to be able to explore the space. And fundamentally, like the things I'm bringing with me or the ethos that I have or the simplicity that it allows for my brain are all very similar. You know, it's not that they don't have their own nuances and differences, but yeah, to pretend like these things are totally isolated things that don't have an overlapping Venn diagram is definitely taking oneself and one's discipline way too seriously.
Yeah, and you've probably seen with garage grown gear being around long enough now that as people like age out of the cycle where they get their Triple Crown done and have to become like recreational, whether it's running or just camping or through hiking or section hiking or something, they take everything from that niche and garage your own gear into the greater world as well. So it's just kind of funny how the growth builds on itself.
Yeah, no, that's something that I used before I did outdoor retail stuff. I led trips, and one of the big things we talked about is that it's not okay just to have a wonderful experience by yourself and then like not translate that to other stuff. And in some aspects, it's kind of selfish. To kind of opt out and remove yourself from society and not take anything that you've learned and infuse it back into the communities that you're with. And I don't know, nothing is in absolutes. So if that statement doesn't resonate with someone and as a listener, maybe it doesn't apply. But I've always thought about it as when I've been on extended trips, the perspective that it gives me, the insights about myself, my own leadership, my own styles of thinking, that it's my responsibility to take those reflections and infuse them back into my other relationships. And by doing that, wilderness time isn't something that I just do for myself in isolation, but it's something that makes me a better person. And, as people who are a part of a more global community, I think we have an obligation to each other. I think that there's some type of synergy there of like, nature isn't just for you. It can be healing for yourself, but it can be so much more than that. It can be such a unifying thing. Like it doesn't, as you get older and you can't, I don't know, people through hike at any age, but like, you're right. Like, I haven't done any long trails in a number of years now, but that doesn't mean that suddenly I just check all of my mentality at the door. Like, no, if I have to, figure out how to be able to bring some of the framework and the simplicity and mentality of the outdoors into my very urban life. And at times that's more challenging than if I, had access to the outdoors all the time.
And I think the through hiking outdoor world really, in that sense, has shown me that when you all have the same goal, like say you're on the PCT hiking north, your all in goal is the end of that trail. And then you immediately have a bond. You can become friends within like 10 minutes because all you worry about is food, water, shelter. And once you hit that terminus and go back to whatever life you're living, that's like that one of those lessons you're alluding to that you take home, and knowing that we're all kind of marching down towards the same terminus at the end. And it's so easy to just look around and interact because, the baseline is always the same throughout it all. So that's kind of the outdoor thing that has really made me stay in the industry now for over a decade. Where do you see?
Full support.
Where do you see it going? Like, where is the growth happening on the garage grown gear, the through hiker side? Where do you see it all going as we get all these boomers retiring and through hiking?
Yeah. Well, I think it's, I still think it's upwards and onwards. Like I think, there's a little bit of a COVID backlash. I think outdoor retailers are still kind of spiraling to figure out how to be able to deal with modern economics. I think we perhaps do have a little bit of an oversaturation in the market currently, but, more and more, like it's anyone who's been on any trails of any spots in the US knows that like they're not becoming less crowded. There's only more people, there's only more interest, there's only more accessibility, and these things in and of themselves are not bad at all. It's more people getting outside, and with that, I think as the overall market continues to grow, the niche of ultralight will continue to grow. I think like you're seeing, REI has quilts. REI has like ultralight is on everything, like it's the adjective of the season. And so I think, Hyperlight's in REI. You can get Z-Packs at public lands. Wow, that's weird. Kind of surprising, but you can. And the fact that public lands exists, that Dick's Sporting Goods decided that the industry was such a potential big moneymaker that it was worth starting an entirely new chain of retail stores in a kind of bad retail climate, is, indicative of like people way smarter than me are clearly forecasting continued market growth within the outdoor industry. I think what people don't know is where exactly that's going to be, but it's definitely going to be in the, the RVing area, the overlanding area. I think the ultralight area, I mean, definitely, doesn't hang out in those two spaces that frequently, but ATV tourism is like, I don't know, there's just like so many ways to experience the outdoors. And regardless if you think that those are, fun or dumb or terrible for the environment or not, I think it all scratches at this human desire to spend more time outside. So, gear is always a reflection of that. If there is more people spending time outside, especially domestically here in the United States, gear sales are going to continue to ebb and flow, but I think continue to trend in upwards directions. And there might be a lot of brand casualties along the way for brands that kind of have just continued to stagnate and not create new stuff, not to innovate, not to actually follow the trends, not to figure out how to exist in modern retail, the balance between brick and mortar and online, and how to be able to work best with social media influencers and not just rely on Google ads or Facebook ads, but like actually needing to figure out how to create a brand identity and market. Yeah, some of the brands that aren't able to do that probably are not going to be around very long, but that has never not been the case. Like the internet did not do that. The internet is not making people obsolete. It's those who are willing to change and those who are willing not to. And I think the thing that I love about Garage Grown is that like I have to look at it with fresh eyes every day. There might be a brand that launches before this podcast publishes that I haven't even heard of yet. It's possible.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that there is a level of newness and freshness in that. And you can either see that newness as a threat or you can see it as an opportunity. And I like refuse to see growth from a fear mindset.
Totally.
And you can stagnate, or you can just kind of keep going and hoping that things turn out. And if it doesn't, you did your best along the way.
Yeah. All right. I have one last question. So what advice would you give, especially having the experience succeeding, failing, I'm sure many times along the way, to someone who's got that idea? Maybe they've sewed up something, or maybe they want to start anything. How do you just start a business? Because that is the scary part.
Yeah. I mean, I think when people start a business, you're suddenly realizing that you don't know anything about running a business. Like, even if you have a business background, you're like, okay, I have to do marketing, I have to do finance, I have to know production, I have to know how to sew. And also, I'm not a very good writer, but I feel like I have to write a blog or an ambassador. Like, there's just so many different things that I think one feels like they have to do to be able to be successful in business. And I think, like, the biggest thing that I tell myself is that you don't have to do everything. Just do a couple things really well. Like maybe you've got a beautiful website. Cool. Do that. And, focus on your website before you start trying to get people to go to your crappy website. Like, make sure that the bones of what you're doing are strong. Make sure you've got a good product. Make sure you've got a good website. Make sure that you've got good connections within the industry. It's not that you have to be perfect out of the gate, but like own a couple things well. You don't have to be on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Pinterest, and all of those things. Just find a platform that works for you and stick to it for a while. Once you feel like you've got that down, explore something different. But you almost have to kind of like alleviate the feeling that you need to be everything to everyone. Try it. Like, the worst thing you can do is fail. And, and that can suck, and that can be an ego hit. But I mean, why not? Instagram is free. Websites are like not that much. You can probably find a used sewing machine at a Goodwill for next to nothing. Like, it's not that hard to start a business. It can be pretty tricky to grow one, but to start one, you can file automatically at the Secretary of State in Minnesota, and they'll give you an LLC on an auto confirmation email. So go for it.
Yeah, it's so good, because I do think it's that, well, people's full-time jobs is to be influencers on the platforms. They don't have a product or run a business. So I think it's that thing where a company is working full-time creating something and trying to full-time have content out there. And it's like, if you have that product and find a few ways, there's a bunch of good statistics out there about how few people you need to have a viable business. And it's not the people that you have to reach on TikTok or something. If you don't get TikTok or you don't like it, you don't have to use it. I think that's the biggest thing in the cottage market is don't do it just to do it poorly. If you're going to do it well, do it. But if you're doing it poorly, that's worse than not being on there.
100%. Yeah. I mean, like being an amateur hour on TikTok and getting like 30 likes from mostly like your mom and a couple of your friends does nothing for your business. Like running a crappy Instagram does not help your marketing. Like it does the opposite. And then you're spending hours each week shooting yourself in the foot. Sounds horrible.
Yeah. And I think the answer is really in where do you already spend your time? If you're on Instagram, if you're on Reddit, like just start with that avenue and you could just build up through there. And I mean, there's so many, they're all fun stages looking back at when growth, but you have to get to that viable level where you're getting honest feedback too, because your first product, like you said, the rickety backpack is not going to be your final product. So I think just getting to 1, then getting to 2, then step 3, and then you'll end up on Garage Grown Gear.
Yeah, that's right. And if you look at Garage Grown Gear's website from 7 years ago, like, you know, it's like when you read your college essay and you're like, this sucks. I wrote that. Like looking back at Garage Grown, I'm like, I don't know if I would shop there. And you know, you just kind of have to be patient and know that it's a journey. And like all things in life, like there are, you can't just expect yourself to be perfect. Like you have to expect and know that failure and challenge is part of running a business. It's not an anomaly. It's not an exception. It's not even a hiccup. It's just like it is. Like that, if you can't deal with failure, if you can't deal with challenge and stress, like that is ingrained in what business running is. There is no separating those two worlds. It's impossible.
Perfectly said. Way to send people out on a positive note.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. This was super fun.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. It was it's always great to chat with you, and even more fun when it's recorded on a podcast.
And that was Lloyd Vogel. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Check out Garage Grown Gear. Check out my website. Check out anything out there on the internet because there's so much good stuff. The brand stories on Garage Grown Gear are especially interesting and hopefully give some perspective if you've always wanted that shove to go do something. Because, you know, as a creative species, I guess you could say, there is that need to make something and you can turn it into a business a lot earlier on than you think with multiple platforms. The internet has been so good for a few things, like starting a podcast. So I will be back on Monday, and until then, stay elite, my friends.